Welcome, guys. Glad to have you here. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late, or a minute late. It's 11:31. I'm at home, obviously, and my little boy was going down for a nap, and he was asking for daddy kisses. So I had to go give my little boy some kisses. But looks like some of you guys are already here, which is awesome. Kiara, Nevaeh, Josh, glad to have you guys here. So we have 4 chapters that we're going to read today in Treasure Island, chapters 28 through 31. So let's get started, right? Oh, yep, nice. Wait, you can't hear me? Can anybody else hear me? My mic should be working. Anybody else hear me? So Josh can hear me, okay. It might just be your internet. You could try to, I guess I'll type it in since you can't hear me. If you can't hear me, I can't tell you what to do. Exit it now. All right. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started, right? Chapter 28. Okay, so let me pull up our book. Alrighty. And so remember what happened last time. We read how Jim Hawkins got onto the boat, the Hispaniola, and that he ended up fighting with the shipmates to take over the ship, and then he got them to take the ship to shore, right, with Israel Hands, and then ended up having a fight with Israel Hands and ended up killing Israel Hands. Jim Hawkins then later went to go back to the log house or the blockhouse as they called it, and he was sneaking in at night because he didn't want to wake anybody up, but he felt like something was off, and then he bumped into somebody, and then he soon found out that it wasn't his comrades, it wasn't his buddies, it was the Buccaneers, it was the pirates. And so that's where we left off. And so we're going to start from right there, right? The enemy's camp. So Jim Hawkins just got into the enemy's camp. It was on mute? Okay. Glad you figured out. All right, so let's start reading. The glare of the torch lighting up the interior of the blockhouse revealed the pirates in possession of the house and stores, with not a sign of any prisoner. I could only judge that all had perished. There were 6 buccaneers, all told. Not another man was left alive. 5 of them were on their feet, flushed and swollen, called out of their drunken sleep. The 6th had only risen up upon his elbow. He was deadly pale, and the blood-stained bandage round his head told that he had recently been wounded. I remembered the man who had been shot and had run back among the woods in the attack. So, said Long John, here's Jim Hawkins, shiver me timbers, dropped in like a... And he sat down across the brandy cask and began to fill a pipe. Give me a light, Dick, said he. And so, Jim, quite a pleasant surprise. I seen you were smart. And first I set my eyes on you, but this here gets away from me clean, it does. I stood there looking Silver in the face, pluckily enough, I hope, to all outward appearance, but with black despair in my heart. Silver took a whiff or two of his pipe. Now you see, Jim, since you are here, says he, I'll give you a piece of my mind. I've always liked you for a lad of spirit. I've always wanted you to find and take your share. I've always wanted you... And now you've got to. Captain Smolt's a fine seaman, as I'll own up to any day, but stiff on discipline. Duty is duty, says the captain, and right he is. The doctor himself has gone against you. Ungrateful scamp, was what he said. You can't go back to your own lot, for they won't have you. You'll have to join with Captain Silver. So far so good. My friends then were still alive, and though I partially believed that they were incensed at me for my desertion, I was more relieved than distressed by what I heard. Am I to answer then? I asked with a tremulous voice. Though all this sneering talk, I was made to feel the threat of death, and my heart beat painfully in my breast. None of us won't hurry you, said Silver. Well, says I, growing a bit bolder, if I'm to choose, I have a right to know why you're here and where my friends are. Batten down your hatches till you're spoke to, cried Silver. All right, so that is a key vocabulary phrase right there. Batten down your hatches, which means be quiet. Then in gracious tones he said, yesterday morning, Mr. Hawkins, said he, down came Dr. Livesey with a flag of truce. Says he, Captain Silver, you're sold out, ship's gone. Well, maybe we'd been taking a glass. Leastwise, none of us had looked out. We looked out, and by thunder, the old ship was gone. Well, says the doctor, let's bargain. We bargained, him and I, and here we are. Stores, brandy, blockhouse, the firewood, and the boat. As for them, they've tramped. I don't know where they are. He drew again quietly at his pipe. And in case you should take it into the head, this is still Silver speaking. And in case you should still take it into the head of yours, he went on, that you was included in the treaty when I asked, how many are you? 4, says he, and one of us is wounded. As for that boy, I don't know where he is, and I don't much care. Well, said I know pretty well what I have to look for. Let the worst come. It's little I care. I've seen too many die since I fell in with you. But there's a thing or two I have to tell you, I said. And by this time I was quite excited. Here you are, in a bad way. Ship lost, treasure lost, men lost. Your whole business gone to wreck. And if you want to know who did it, it was I. I was in the apple barrel the night we sighted land. And I heard you, John and you, Dick Johnson and Hans, who is now at the bottom of the sea, and told every word you said before the hour was out. And as the schooner, it was I who cut her cable, and it was I that killed the men who had aboard her, and it was I who brought her where you'll never see her more, not one of you. The laugh's on my side. I no more fear you than I fear a fly. Kill me if you please, or spare me, but one thing I'll say, and no more. If you spare me, bygones are bygones. And when you fellas are in court for piracy, I'll save you all I can. You choose. Kill me and do yourselves no good, or spare me and keep a witness to save you from the gallows. I stopped, out of breath. Not a man moved, but all sat staring at me like sheep. And while they were still staring, I broke out again. And now, Mr. Silver, I said, I believe you're the best man here. And if things go to the worst, I'll take it kind of you to let the doctor know the way I took it. I'll bear it in mind, said Silver, with an accent so curious that I could not decide whether he were laughing at my request or had been favorably affected by my courage. I'll put one to that, cried the old mahogany-faced seaman, Morgan by name, whom I had seen in Long John's public house in Bristol. It was him that knowed Black Dog. It was this same boy that faked the chart from Billy Bones, added the sea cook. First and last, we've split up Jim Hawkins. There he goes, said Morgan with an oath, and he sprang up, drawing his knife. Avast there, Tom Morgan, cried Silver. Maybe you thought you was captain here. I'll teach you better. Cross me, and you'll go where many a man's gone before, to feed the fishes. Morgan paused, but a hoarse murmur rose from the others. Tom's right, said one. Did any of you gentlemen want to have it out with me? Roared Silver. Him that wants shall get it. I'm ready. Take a cutlass. Him that dares, and I'll see the color of him in his inside. And I'll see the color of his inside. Not a man stirred, not a man answered. Here's a little depiction of that just happened. That's your sort, is it? He added, returning his pipe to his mouth. Not much worth, you ain't. I'm captain here because I'm the best man by a sea mile. You won't fight, as gentlemen o' fortune should. Then, by thunder, you'll obey. That boy is more a man than any pair of you. There was a long pause after this. I stood straight up against the wall, my heart still going like a sledgehammer. But with a ray of hope now shining in my bosom, Silver leaned back as calm as though he had been in church. Yet his eye kept wandering upon his unruly followers. They drew together toward the far end of the blockhouse, whispering, one after another. They would look up, But it was not towards me, it was towards Silver that they turned their eyes. Ask your pardon, sir, said one of them. You're pretty free with some of the rules. We don't like bullying. This crew has rights like other crews. By your own rules, we can talk together. I ask your pardon, sir, acknowledging you to be captain at present, but I claim my right and steps outside for a council. And with an elaborate salute, this fellow, a yellow-eyed man of 35, stepped coolly out of the house. One after another, the rest followed him, each making a salute as he passed, and left Silver and me alone. Now look here, Jim Hawkins, Silver said in a whisper that was barely audible. You're near your death, and what's worse of torture. They're going to throw me off, but you, Mark, I stand by you through thick and thin. I didn't mean to, no, not till you spoke, but I see you was the right sort. I says to myself, you stand by Hawkins, John, and Hawkins will stand by you. You mean all's lost? I asked. I do, he answered. Ship's gone, net gone. That's the size of it. Once I look into that bay and see no schooner, well, I gave out. As for that lot, mark me, they're outright fools. I'll save your life if I can from them, but tit for tat, Jim, you saved Long John Silver from swinging. I was bewildered. It seemed a helpless thing he was asking. He, the ringleader throughout. What I can do, I'll do, I said. It's a bargain, cried Long John. You speak up, Plucky, and by thunder, I have a chance. He hobbled to the torch to light his pipe. Understand me, Jim, he said, returning. I've a head on my shoulders. I have. I'm on Squire's side now. I know you've got that ship safe somewhere. How you done it, I don't know. I guess Hans and O'Brien turned soft. I know when a game's up. I do. And I know a lad that's staunch. Ah, you that's young, you and me might have done a power of good together. He drew some cognac from the cask into a tin can and offered me some. When I refused, he said, Well, I'll take a drain myself, Jim, for there's trouble on hand. And talking of trouble, why did that doctor give me the chart, Jim? My face expressed wonder so unaffected that he saw the needless of further questions. There's something under that, no doubt, and he took another swallow of the brandy, shaking his head like a man who looks forward to the worst. All right, there's chapter 28. So I'm just going to review some questions really quick with you to help you guys get prepared for your chapter questions. So, how does Silver keep Tom Morgan from killing Jim Hawkins? Why do the pirates want to have a council? What deal does Silver make with Jim? And how did Silver get the chart? So those are 4 questions. You'll probably only get tested on 1 or 2 of those from chapter 28. All right, let's jump into chapter 29. Chapter 29, The Black Spot Again. The council had lasted some time when one of them re-entered the house and begged for the torch. Silver agreed, leaving us in the dark. Halfway down the slope, the conspirators were collected in a group. One held the light, another was on his knees in their midst, and I saw a book and an open knife in his hand. Soon the kneeling figure rose to his feet, and the whole party began to move towards the house. Let him come, lad, said Silver cheerily. I've still a shot in my locker. The door opened, and the 5 men huddled together just inside, pushed one man forward. I won't eat you, lad, said Silver. Hand it over, and I know the rules. The buccaneer passed something to Silver's hand and slipped back to his companions. The black spot, I thought so, observed the sea cook. Where might you have got the paper? Now, this ain't lucky. What fools cut a Bible? What did I say? Said Morgan. No good will come o' that, I said. Well, you've about fixed it now, continued Silver. You'll all swing now, I reckon. But the man with the yellow eyes struck in. It's a little depiction of what just took place. This crew has tipped you the black spot in full council, John Silver, as in duty bound. Just see what's wrote there, then you can talk. Thank you, George, replied the sea cook. You always was a brisk for business, and has the rules by heart. Deposed. That's it, is it? Very pretty wrote, to be sure, your hand, George. Why, you was getting to be quite a leading man in this here crew. You'll be captain next. Just oblige me with that torch again. This pipe don't draw." "You don't fool this crew no more," said George. "You're over now, and you'll maybe step down off that barrel and help vote." "I thought you said you knowed the rules," returned Silver contemptuously. "If you don't, I do. I wait here, and I'm still your captain, mind, till you outs with your grievances, and I reply. In the meantime, your black spot ain't worth a biscuit. After that, we'll see." "Oh," replied George, "don't be under no apprehension. We're all square, we are. First, you've made a hash of this cruise. Second, you let the enemy out o' this here trap for nothing. Why did they want out? Third, you wouldn't let us go at them upon the march. Oh, we see through you, John Silver. You want to play booty? That's it. And fourth, there's this boy." "Is that all?" asked Silver quietly. "Enough too," returned George. "Well, I'll hang in the sun for your blunging. I'm sorry. Well, now look here. I'll answer these 4 points. I made a hash of this cruise, did I? You all know what I wanted, and if that had been done, we'd have been aboard the Hispaniola this night, every man of us alive, and the treasure in the hold. By thunder! Who crossed me? Who tipped me the black spot the day we landed? Why, it was Anderson and Hans and you, George Mary. You're the last of that meddling crew, and you have the insolence to stand for captain over me, you, that sank the lot of us." Silver paused, and I could see by the faces of George and his late comrades that these words had not been said in vain. "That's for number 1, cried the accused. "Why, you've never since nor memory, and I leave it to fancy where your mother's was, that let you come to sea. See, gentlemen o' fortune, I reckon tailors is your trade. You say this cruise is bungled. By gum, if you could understand how bad it's bungled, you would see. We're that near hanging that my neck's stiff with thinking on it. And if you want to know about number 4 and that boy, why, are we going to waste a hostage? No, not us. He might be our last chance. Kill that boy, not me. He might be our last chance. Sorry, I just read that part. So he might be our last chance. Kill that boy, not me. And number 3, maybe you don't count it to have a real college doctor come to see you every day. You, John, with your head broke, or you, George Mary, that had the shakes not 6 hours ago, and still has eyes the color of lemon peel. And maybe you didn't know there was a rescue boat coming either, but there is, and we'll see who'll be glad to have a hostage when it comes to that. And as for number 2, and why I made a bargain, well, you came crawling on your knees to me to make it, and you'd have starved too if I hadn't, but that's a trifle. You look there, that's why." And he cast down upon the floor none other than the chart of yellow paper with the 3 red crosses that I had found in the captain's chest. Why the doctor had given it to him was more than I could fancy. The appearance of the chart was incredible to the surviving mutineers. They leaped upon it like cats on a mouse. It went from hand to hand, one tearing it from another. "Yes," said one, "that's Flint, sure enough, J.F., and a score below, with the clove hitched to it." "Mighty pretty," said George, "but how are we to get away with it? And us no ship." Silver sprang up, supporting himself with the hand against the wall. "I give you a warning, George," he cried. "One more word of your sauce, and I'll call you down. How? You ought to tell me that. You and the rest. That lost me my schooner. But not you. You can't. You haven't got the invention of a cockroach. You lost the ship. I found the treasure. Who's the better man at that? I resign. By thunder. Elect whom you please to be your captain. I'm done with it." "Silver," they cried. "Barbecue forever." "Barbecue for captain. So that's the tune, is it?" cried the cook. "George, I reckon you'll have to wait another turn. Lucky for you, I'm not a vengeful man. That never was my way. And now, shipmates, this black spot, 'tain't much good now, is it? Dick's crossed his luck and spoiled his Bible, and that's about all. Here, Jim, here's a curiosity for you," said Silver, and he tossed me the paper. It was round. One side was blank, for it had been the last leaf. The other contained a verse or 2 of Revelation. All right, so that's it's a vocabulary word right there. Revelation is the last book of the Bible's New Testament, which contains a vision of the last days of the world. So these words struck home upon my mind. Without without our dogs and murderers. The printed side had been blackened with wood ash. On the blank side had been written with the same material the word deposed. I still have that curiosity, but not a trace of writing now remains. Soon after, with a drink all around, we lay down to sleep, and Silver's vengeance was to put George Merry up for sentinel and threaten him with death if he could prove unfaithful. It was long before I could sleep. Heaven knows I had matter enough for thought in the man whom I had slain that afternoon, in my own perilous position, and, above all, in the remarkable game that I saw Silver now engaged upon, keeping the mutineers together with one hand, and grasping with the other after every means to save his miserable life. He himself slept peacefully and snored, yet my heart was sore for him, wicked as he was, to think on the dark perils that awaited him. Right on. That is chapter 29. So here are some questions that could pop up from chapter 29. 3 questions. Question 1, where do the parrots get the paper to make the black spot? Sorry, pirates. Where do the pirates get the paper to make the black spot? The second question, what does Long John Silver say about their having cut up a Bible? And then the last question, question 3, how does Long John Silver convince the conspirators that they still want him for captain? Okay, moving on to chapter 30. So 2 more chapters for today, okay? So let's continue on. So chapter 30, on parole. We were awakened by a clear, hearty voice hailing us from the margin of the wood. "Blockhouse ahoy, here's the doctor." I was glad to hear the sound, but my gladness was mixed. I remembered my stealthy conduct, and I felt ashamed to look the doctor in the face. He must have risen in the dark, for the day had hardly come, and when I ran to a loophole and looked out, I saw him standing in vapor. "Top of the morning to you, doctor," cried Silver, beaming with good nature. George helped Dr. Livesey over the ship's side. "All a-doing. Well, your patience was all well and merry. We've quite a surprise for you too, sir," he continued. "We've a stranger here. He, a new lodger, sir, slept alongside John all night." "Not Jim." The doctor stopped, and it was some seconds before he seemed able to move. Well, he said at last. "Duty first and pleasure afterwards, Silver. Let us overhaul these patients of yours." He entered the blockhouse, and, with one grim nod to me, proceeded with his work. He seemed under no apprehension, though he must have known that his life among these demons depended on a hair. "You're doing well, my friend," he said to the fellow with the bandaged head. "And George, how goes it? Did he take that medicine, men? Because since I am prison doctor, as I prefer to call it," says Dr. Livesey, "I make it a point of honor not to lose a man for the gallows." The rogue swallowed the words in silence. "Dick don't feel well, sir," said one. "Well, step up here, Dick, and let me see your tongue," said the doctor. "No, I should be surprised if he did. Another fever." "That came of spoiling Bibles," said Morgan. "That came of being fools," retorted the doctor, "and not having sense enough to know honest air from poison. You'll all be sick before you get that malaria out of your systems. Camp in a bog, would you? Silver, you don't appear to me to have a notion of the rules of health. Well," he added, after they had taken his prescriptions, "that's done for today. And now I want to have a talk with that boy, please." George Merry cried, "No!" and he swore. Silver struck the barrel with his hand. "Silence!" he roared. "Doctor," he went on, "I was thinking of that, knowing how you had a fancy for the boy. Hawkins, will you give me your word of honor as a young gentleman not to escape?" I readily gave the pledge required. "Then, doctor," said Silver, "you step outside that stockade, and once you're there, I'll bring the boy down on the inside, and you can talk." The explosion of disapproval broke out immediately after the doctor had left the house. Silver was accused of playing double for his own gain. I could not imagine how he was to turn their anger, but he was twice the man the rest were. He called them fools and said it was necessary I should talk to the doctor, fluttered the chart in their faces, asked them if they could afford to break the treaty the very day they were bound to treasure hunting. "No, by thunder," he cried, "it's us must break the treaty when the time comes." And then he bade them get the fire lit and stalked out, with his hand on my shoulder. Slow, lad, he said. They might come upon us if we was seen to hurry. As soon as we were within easy speaking distance of the doctor, Silver stopped. The boy'll tell you how I saved his life, doctor, says he. You'll please bear in mind it's not my life only now, it's the boy's into the bargain, and you'll speak fair, doctor, and give me a bit of hope to go on for the sake of mercy. Silver was a changed man. Once he had his back to his friends in the blockhouse, his voice trembled, and never was a soul more in earnest. Why, John, you're not afraid? Asked Dr. Livesey. Doctor, I'm no coward, but I have the shakes upon me for the gallows. You're a good man, and you'll not forget what I done good, not any more than you'll forget the bad. I'll step aside and leave you and Jim alone, and you'll put that down for me, too. So saying, he stepped back out of earshot and sat down upon a tree stump. So, Jim, said the doctor sadly, I could not find it in my heart to blame you, but this much I will say. When Captain Smollett was well, you dared not have gone off. When he was ill and couldn't help it, it was downright cowardly. I began to weep. Doctor, I said, I blame myself enough, and I should have been dead by now if Silver hadn't stood for me. I dare say I deserve to die, but what I fear is torture. Jim, I can't have this, said the doctor. Jump, and we'll run for it like antelopes. Doctor, said I gave my word. You wouldn't do it yourself. Silver trusted me, and back I go. But if they torture me, I might let slip a word of where the ship is. She lies in North Inlet, on the southern beach, just below high water. At half tide, she must be high and dry. The ship, exclaimed the doctor. I described my adventures, and he heard me out in silence. Every step, it's you that saves our lives. Do you suppose that we are going to let you lose yours? You found out the plot. You found Ben Gunn, the best deed that you ever did, or will do. Silver, I'll give you a piece of advice, he continued, as the cook drew near. Don't be in a great hurry after that treasure. I can only save my life and the boys by seeking that treasure, said Silver. Well, Silver, replied the doctor, if that is so, look out for squalls when you find it. Sir, said Silver, that's too much and too little. Why you left the blockhouse and given me the chart, I don't know, and yet I've done your bidding with my eyes shut and never a word of hope. It's not my secret, Silver, or I'd tell it to you. Tell it to you. I'll give you a bit of hope. If we both get out of this wolf trap, I'll do my best to save you. That's my first concession, added the doctor. My second advice, keep the boy close beside you, and when you need help, hollow, goodbye, Jim. Dr. Livesey shook hands with me through the stockade, nodding to Silver, and set off. Well, it looks like there is a plan in place for the good people to take over the pirates when the time is right, close to the treasure. That's at least what I'm thinking. I don't know what you guys are thinking. All right, so a few questions that you might get tested on for chapter 30. Why does Dr. Livesey come to take care of the enemy pirates? Remember, he kind of gave himself his own nickname right there. That will help you out with that question. Why does Jim return to Long John Silver instead of running for it, as the doctor suggests? And then the last question from chapter 30 is, what advice did the doctor give Silver before he left the stockade? Okay, one more chapter, guys, and then we are done for today. At least with Treasure Island, right? We have our Dynasties chapter coming up. Okay. Oh, don't have any chat commands for today. Alrighty. Flint's pointer. Jim, said Silver when we were alone, if I saved your life, you saved mine, and I'll not forget it. I seen the doctor waving you to run for it, and I seen you say no, Jim. That's one to you. This is the first glint of hope I had since the attack failed, and I owe it to you. Now you and me must stick close, and we'll save our necks in spite of fate and fortune. Just then a man hailed us that breakfast was ready, and we were soon seated about the sand over biscuit and fried pork. They had lit a fire to roast an ox. In the same wasteful spirit, they cooked 3 times more than we could eat, and one of them threw what was left into the fire. I never saw men so careless of the morrow. Hand to mouth is the only way to describe their way. Even Silver eating away, with Captain Flint upon his shoulder, had not a word of blame. "Aye, mates," he said, "it's lucky you have barbecue to think for you. Sure enough, they have the ship. Where they have it, I don't know yet, but once we hit the treasure, we'll have to find out. Then, mates, us that has the boats, I reckon, has the upper hand." Thus he restored their hope and confidence. "As for the hostage," he continued, "I'll take him in a line when we go treasure hunting. We'll keep him like so much gold in case of accidents. Once we get the ship and treasure and off to sea like jolly companions, why, then, we'll give Mr. Hawkins his share for his kindness." The men were in a good humor now. For my part, I was horribly cast down. Should the scheme he now sketched prove feasible, Silver, doubly a traitor, would not hesitate to adopt it. He had still a foot in either camp, and there was no doubt he would prefer wealth and freedom with the pirates to bear escape from hanging. And even if he was forced to keep his faith with Dr. Livesey, what danger lay before us? When the suspicions of his followers turned to certainty, and I should have to fight for dear life against 5 strong seamen. All but me were armed to the teeth. Silver had 2 guns slung about him, one before and one behind. Besides the great cutlass at his wrist, and a pistol in each pocket of his square-tailed coat, Captain Flint sat perched upon his shoulder, grabbing sea talk. I had a line about my waist, and followed obediently after the sea cook, led like a dancing bear. Some men carried picks and shovels, and others were laden with pork, bread, and brandy for the midday meal. Thus equipped, we all set out, even the fellow with the broken head, and straggled to the beach, where the 2 gigs awaited us. Both were to be carried along with us, for the sake of safety, so we set forth. There was discussion on the chart. The Red Cross was far too large to be a guide, and the terms of the note were uncertain. Tall tree, spyglass shoulder, bearing a point of the north-northeast, Skeleton Island, east-southeast, and by east 10 feet. A tall tree was thus the principal mark. Before us, the anchorage was bound by a plateau 300 feet high that joined the sloping southern shoulder of the spyglass. Here and there, a pine tree rose 40 or 50 feet above its neighbors. Which of these was the particular tall tree could only be decided on the spot, and by the readings of the compass. After quite a long passage, we landed at the mouth of the river that runs down a cleft of the spyglass. Then, bending left, we began to ascend towards the plateau. Murray ground and matted vegetation greatly delayed our progress, but little by little the hill began to steepen and become stony underfoot, and the woods to grow in a more open order. The air was fresh and a wonderful refreshment to our senses. The party spread in a fan shape, shouting and leaping, a good way behind the rest. Silver and I followed. I tethered by my rope, he plowing with deep pants among the sliding gravel. From time to time I had to lend him a hand, or he would have fallen backward down the hill. We had thus proceeded for about half a mile, when a man gave a cry of terror. Shout after shout came from him, and the others began to run in his direction. We soon reached the spot. At the foot of a pine, partly covered by a vine, lay a human skeleton with few shreds of clothing. I believe a chill struck every heart. "He was a seaman," said George Merry, who had gone up close and was examining the rags of clothing. "Leastwise, this is good sea cloth." Aye, said Silver. "You wouldn't find a bishop here, I reckon. But what sort of way is that for bones to be? It ain't in nature." Indeed, the man lay perfectly straight, his feet pointing one direction, his hands raised above his head like a diver's, pointing in the opposite. "I've taken a notion into my old skull," said Silver. "Here's the compass. There's the tip-top point o' Skeleton Island. Just take a bearing, will you, along the line of them bones." It was done. The body pointed straight in the direction of the island, and the compass read duly east-southeast by east. "I thought so," cried the cook. "This here is a pointer. This is one of Flint's jokes. Him and these 6 was alone here. He killed 'em, every man, and this one he hauled here and laid down by the compass. They're long bones, and the hair's been yellow. Aye, that would be Alderus. You remember Alderus, Tom Morgan?" Aye, returned Morgan. "He owed me money, he did, and took my knife." "Speaking of knives," said another, "why don't we find his lying around? Flint weren't the man to pick a seaman's pocket." "There ain't a thing left here," said Mary. still feeling round among the bones. Not even a tobacco box. It don't look natural to me. No, it don't, agreed Silver. But if Flint was living, this would be a hot spot for you and me. 6 they were, and 6 we are, and Bones is what they are now. I saw him dead, said Morgan. Sure enough, he's dead and gone below, said the fellow with the bandage. But if ever a spirit walked, it would be Flint's. He died bad. Aye, he did, observed another. Now he raged, and now he hollered for rum, and now he sang. 15 men were his only song, mates, and I tell you true, I never rightly liked to hear it since. Come, come, said Silver. Stow his stock. He's dead, and he don't walk. Leastwise, he won't walk by day. Fetch ahead for Dublin's. But the pirates no longer ran, separate and shouting. They kept side by side. The terror of the dead buccaneer had fallen on their spirits. Alrighty, guys. That is it. 1 second. Let me see if there should be some questions for you guys to get prepared for your chapter study questions. All right, so chapter 31 was Flint's Pointer. So what does the title of this chapter mean? What is Flint's Pointer? Think about what they saw at that tree. What do the mutineers begin to worry about after they find the skeleton? And then the last question is, what does Jim mean when he says that Silver has a foot in either camp? Okay, well, that is it. Thanks for joining today and following along with reading. Those that were here, Josh, Nevaeh, Kiara, it's good having you. Those that are watching the replay, hope you are enjoying Treasure Island. We do have a lesson later today at 2 o'clock for history with Dynasties of China. So if you can make that, that'd be great. Make sure you're getting caught up with all of your work. Only about a week and a half left of this first quarter, and grades are going to be turned in soon. So if you need any help with anything, reach out to me. But that is it. You guys are awesome. Keep it up, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.